before. So I now request Mr. Kuldeep Kotak to kindly take the stage, sir. Kotak, sir, please.
Thank you, Brigadier Diman. I'm thankful to you for inviting me to this wonderful webinar, and especially the topic which has been chosen for discussion, because this is the one area, this is the gray area which has remained largely unaddressed in J&K. Whereas the security forces and the police have been doing a great job since last more than 3 decades now in controlling the terrorism levels in J&K. But as we all know, it is a sort of unabating battle which is continuing and which is likely to continue. Now coming to the topic under discussion, it is widely known, all of you are experts as far as knowing the terrorism which is happening in J&K, that the funding of terrorism is one of the most important ingredients of enrolling terrorists and financing terrorism and keeping the terror levels at a level which can be absorbed easily by the international community, and whereby levels don't rise to an extent that Pakistan is targeted to the extent that it stops terrorism. Now, as rightly said, it is a sort of oxygen supply to the terror outfits, and without it, the terrorism cannot survive. As we all know that the main funding which has been coming is routed through ISI. The sources are different. The generation of funding is from different areas at global level, but it is mainly the ISI which is coordinating the entire effort to transfer and ensure that the fund flow to terror outfits, the overground workers continues. We know it very well that the terrorism is still on, the fresh recruitment is still on, the training modules outside the state in Pakistan and inside our union territory are also continuing. Radicalization program, which also requires huge funding, is still on. Payment to the families of killed terrorists, that is continuing. The overground outfits are still getting money. They have a regular establishment, they have their own staff, they have their offices and establishments which require running cost. They have their staff also, they have transport also. Now, all this when and the regular payment to terrorists for operating, all this requires huge funding, and whereas to a common person, it appears to be a matter of great surprise as to how this entire effort is going on despite our best apparatus in place to control the funding. And it becomes sometimes inexplicable for us to satisfy a common man as to why funding cannot get stopped, why it is continuing, why it is so easy for the ISI and Pakistan establishment to ensure that fund flow continues. Now, you know, the terror funding is as commonly known, the first level is the placement level, whereby the money is generated from different sources, whether from genuine sources or from other sources like narco trade and other things, and then placed in different accounts so that it doesn't remain at one place where it can get detected. I'm telling you this because that will help us understand better as to what are the measures which are required to control it finally, to the extent possible. And then the layering of these funds, that is, keep on transferring these funds from one account to another account in a chain, so that if at any point of time some account in the chain is detected, it becomes difficult to trace the origin and the source of the funding. And then comes the third stage, which is known as integration, that is laundering of money. Finally, as has been happening, the terrorists and the overground workers especially have been laundering the money which has been generated. And we know the NIA has done a tremendous job in registering cases against many terrorists and overground workers in J&K. And they are still in jail. We have the persons are known in the terrorist circles, and some of them, like Yasin Malik and others, had gone even to the extent of meeting the Prime Minister in a roundtable conference in the UPA government as a sort of bringing a solution to J&K. That apart, it's a very contentious issue as to how the terrorism, which is basically originating from Pakistan and controlled from Pakistan, and of which our ground workers in J&K are just a part of that, dependent on Pakistan, as to how they could bring peace to J&K. That's a question which is highly debatable, because while we have not been able to address Pakistan to the extent it was desirable, we have been trying to enter into negotiations with these fellows who are basically killers, the Hawala operators, the fund collectors, and movement of funds to terrorists. Now, rightly, the NIA has taken action against them, and many of them are in the jails. And we know how many properties they had raised by laundering this money. Now, coming to some basics of it, as Brigadier Dhiman has already pointed out, the narco-terrorism is one of the main sources which has been used to fund the terrorism. The role of Pakistan in the narco trade all over the world is very well known. Even the drones have been used by Pakistan to send drugs across the border into India, and for generation of money. The cross LOC trade, which started in 2008 under a sort of joint agreement between India and Pakistan, that again became a big source of transfer of funds for terrorism. And it was very well known that this trade is being misused blatantly with lot of evidence. Cases were registered. The under invoicing of imports into Kashmir and over invoicing of the goods sent across, that was also very well known. And the money generated in the process was being routed to various overground workers and terrorists. That was also well known. Still, we continued with the cross LOC trade for a very, very long time, and it only took a strike like Uri, in which 20 army personnel were sacrificed their lives, after which there was rethinking on this, that this source of funding should be stopped, because it was going on with the concurrence of Indian establishment. I'm only highlighting it because it shows that we are not very quick and responsive to the needs of our into taking immediate action into any event which is basically generated by enemies across in challenging the territorial integrity of our country. I will briefly also mention here that for most part of the terrorism, for nearly 2 decades, starting from 1990, hardly an effort at the level action should have been initiated. By the level, I mean the central government, obviously. There was hardly any serious action taken in controlling the funding. It was only in 2010 when, due to persistence by our security forces, that some serious thought has to be given to the flow of funds into J&K, that Government of India constituted a committee which was headed by the director IB, and which had its members from most of other revenue dealing departments, like the income tax department. Then we had the enforcement directorate as part of it, the CBI part of it, the customs and department, who had the intelligence agencies also, like research and analysis wing as part of it. This committee was constituted. But despite the constitution of committee, unaware of any such serious effort being taken by this committee into collating the intelligence and then trying to take concrete action on the collated intelligence. You know, when we talk about funding, terror funding, financing, we have to understand that the origin of the funding is mostly from outside the country. Whether it is through the money transfer agencies, whether it is through trade, whether it is through the Hajj pilgrims who were returning from Hajj and they carrying packets of money from ISI, whether it was through various NGOs who have now, to our some relief, gone silent. The NGOs whose credentials were known, who were frequently visiting Pakistan for various conferences and become part of the entertainment there. They would enjoy the hospitality of the Pakistani agencies there indirectly, though the NGOs would organize those big conferences and other things in Pakistan at other international levels. But basically, the source of financing, as every intelligence agency knew it, was traced to Pakistan. And despite knowing that, our people, the so-called intellectuals and liberals, would go across the globe, trot across the globe, enjoy hospitality in big places of stay, and of course, having a good time, and then returning back, and then trying to, instead of taking on the problem head on, they would start preaching people-to-people bridges, people-to-people contact, cultural exchanges, which hardly could give any sort of, which we know, hardly gave any relief to us. You know, if we deal with good countries, with civilized countries, probably these things have some role. But dealing with a rogue country like Pakistan, which unashamedly has been propagating terrorism, spreading terrorism not only in India and Kashmir, but throughout the globe. In most of the terrorist actions which took place at global level, there was some direct or indirect hand of Pakistan. And despite knowing the credentials, some people were always advocating this sort of approach, and still there are lots of people who are coming on the television and propagating this sort of approach, that we need to deal with Pakistan in a manner without precipitating the issue. And at that point of time, we'd forget that even small countries like Israel have been largely able to address terrorism by taking firm and effective actions. The European countries have been able to terrorism. The moment some terrorist action took place in their countries, they launched effective measures, not only at the security forces level, but at levels which mattered in ensuring that the movement of terrorists, the flow of funds gets stopped. The UK, in fact, you know, once UK started becoming target, they constituted the UK MLIT, that is United Kingdom Money Laundering Intelligence Task Force, which has agencies from some European countries and also their own intelligence and other agencies which can detect the movement of funds. And that agency did a tremendous job in seizing huge amounts, millions and millions of pounds sterlings, which was otherwise going to flow to terrorists. And US, of course, we know after Twin Tower attack, they took very effective measures in controlling. But in India, we have been unfortunately trying to understand terrorism as part of the job of the just security forces on ground, dealing with the terrorists on ground. and try to forget everything else in the process. The oxygen which is sustaining the terrorism, like terrorist funding, we try to ignore, largely because probably we don't want to deal with it, or we don't have the means to deal with it. Even country like Sri Lanka has been able to, small country like Sri Lanka has been able to tackle terrorism very effectively and decisively. And a big country like India, and dealing with a small country like Pakistan, which is on the brink of bankruptcy, is not able to finish terrorism for all times to come. Now that apart, we still are in the urgent need of controlling, and it is, as I mentioned in my opening points, that it is very good of Brigadier Diman that has organized this conference. And I think the recommendations of this conference should go a long way in case the government of India takes note of these recommendations into ensuring the flow of funds into terrorism. And this problem has become particularly compounded with the use of cryptocurrency, which is being used internationally with least level of detection now. It is all being, this cryptocurrency, Bitcoin and other currencies are being used with impunity to take care of the funding requirements of all sorts of illegal trade. It's not only terrorism in different countries, or particularly who are victims of this terrorism, but all sorts of crimes at global level. This currency is getting used, and the world has to awake to it and see how this cryptocurrency can be controlled so that it is not used for illegal purposes and enhancement of criminal activities. Now we have the charity programs also going on in UK, USA, Europe. The Zakat foundations are there. We know the role of Stand with Kashmir in USA. It has academicians and others also, intellectuals, part of it. They generate funds for financing Kashmir terrorism, and that money keeps on flowing to it. And it was only after the constitution of NIA and its and establishment of its branches in different states, including J&K, that we have seen some effective action being taken against financing, and it has registered lots of cases. But still, I feel there is a lot to be done, lot can be done, and by leaving it and just to local police to deal with it, local police. I mean, let me frankly admit here, I was heading the force for 5 years. I found that J&K police just cannot do anything about it. They have no means to go to trace the origins of money. They have no control of power to deal with the international at international level to get to the origin of money. At best, it can trace and arrest the operators who are in J&K, and that's not the end of it. That will not end the problem. So it required a national investigation agency which has the powers to go and investigate in all states, which can organize raids, arrests in different parts of the country, and also can go with proper liaison with other countries. They can go abroad also and deal with the forums at international level in controlling the flow of funds. I hope NIA constitutes now a special wing to deal exclusively with terror financing. And I'm sure, I think all of you will agree, if fund flow is brought to the minimum, the terrorism in J&K will just collapse. Nobody is going to operate for the ISI in J&K without money. That is for sure. And it's now very necessary that we know the sources. I have listed out some. The means how it is transferred, that's also known. All that is required is now collation, generation and collation of intelligence, translating that intelligence into action, liaising with different countries, putting economic pressure on Pakistan into generating sanctions against them, give more evidence to Financial Action Task Force based in Paris about Pakistan's role in terror financing, so that it goes from grey list to blacklist. It is already under a lot of pressure. In October last year, in 2020, when the virtual meeting was held, last meeting was held, There are still 6 points still outstanding against Pakistan out of 27. They were forced into taking action against people like Lakvi, Hafiz Saeed, his brother-in-law Makki, and others, and they have put them in prison and sentenced them. Now, greater pressure needs to be brought on them. Then the economic sanctions against Pakistan can include revisiting our Indus Valley Treaty, Indus Water Treaty. They trade. We need to have a relook at the type of trade we are doing with Pakistan and to bring more economic pressure on them. China, of course, will be always trying to help them. They are in liaison with China under CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, where they are supposed to invest more than $62 billion. But of course, China is putting stringent conditions on Pakistan, and like many other countries where China has come to the assistance of countries, but ultimately the fate of those countries is known. The Gwadar port is now already with China. They have taken a port in Sri Lanka also, and likewise they have taken many properties. In Kazakhstan, they have taken over properties which is being mined by them for mining of gold and other precious metals. Now, like that, Chinese expansion plans are known, and Pakistan is going to fall in a debt trap. Their external debt is about $112 billion, US million dollars. Their internal public debt is about $270 billion, which is 107% of their GDP. Now, all this is already putting a lot of pressure on Pakistan. We need to build that pressure into putting Pakistan into severe economic distress. And because of FATF, they are not getting any sort of assistance from World Bank, from Asian Development Bank and International Monetary Fund. We need to redouble our efforts into putting Pakistan into corner. Then we need to develop a lot of diplomatic pressure also. Already a lot has been done. It is not the same situation which was there 10 years back. Pakistan, like OIC, has virtually rejected Pakistan when they wanted OIC to bring resolution against Kashmir, pressure on India on Kashmir. They did not succumb to pressure, and Saudi and UAE particularly have been who have been able to build good diplomatic relations with them, and they have rejected Pakistan and favored us. We need to build more diplomatic pressure on Pakistan. And then, of course, the third aspect of it is the military pressure. That is, of course, the internal operations, the counter-insurgency operations in J&K, particularly in Kashmir Valley, are excellent. The security forces have got excellent results always, and the successes are ever increasing only. But we need to think of taking them on at their bases, at their launching pads, at the training camps, the way it happened in Balakot strikes or the surgical strikes across border in Uri. And we need to be more proactive on that and try to target the wanted terrorists, the global terrorists, and the terrorists who have been operating against our country in their own country. The way Osama bin Laden was taken on by USA, we need to take them on that way. That will put Pakistan pressure on MAD, and that's the only way that terrorism will come to an end in Kashmir. The terror financing will come to an end in Kashmir, and the money laundering which is going on because of this, that will also come to an end in Kashmir. That's all I have to say. I leave it to others now to supplement it, and I'm sure that we have many panelists here. Colonel Singh is there, who is an authority on, he has investigated a lot of cases, and he is a huge source of intelligence in this respect, and others will speak on this. Thank you, Brigadier Damon. And I only hope that our recommendations, which get generated from here, go into the right hands at the government of India level for action and some results. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. You enlightened us with all your vast knowledge and vast experience. What have you seen?
Please like and subscribe.